Combat wasn't just another war drama, it was a battlefield disguised as a television set. For 5 grueling seasons, actors crawled through dirt, endured real explosions, fired authentic weapons loaded with powerful blanks, and pushed their bodies to the brink for paychecks that often didn't match the risk. Behind the scenes, tension simmered, injuries mounted, and the line between performance and reality blurred in ways few shows have ever matched. What audiences saw as gripping television was, for the cast and crew, a punishing endurance test. On the very first day of production, Vic Morrow realized what he had signed up for. The role of Sergeant Chip Saunders had been offered to several bigger stars before landing in his hands. Actors who reportedly turned it down because the work was too demanding, the salary too low, and the danger too real. Morrow arrived already immersed in character, wearing combat gear he had purchased himself, determined to portray a soldier as authentically as possible. He refused stunt doubles early on, carried full packs during marches, and performed physically punishing scenes without complaint. That intensity made his performance unforgettable, but it also took a severe toll on his body and mind. Off-camera, Morrow's relationship with co-star Rick Jason was famously strained. On screen, Lieutenant Hanley and Sergeant Saunders trusted each other completely. Off-screen, the actors reportedly spoke only when required. Morrow's habit of improvising lines and actions frustrated Jason, who preferred careful preparation. The producers often sided with Morrow because his unpredictability enhanced the show's realism. Ironically, their genuine tension translated into electric performances, making their scenes together feel raw and believable. Authenticity extended to the weapons. The production used real World War II firearms modified to fire blanks, which still produced deafening noise, recoil, and muzzle flash. Safety standards of the era were far looser than today's, and accidents did happen. In one incident, burning powder from a blank cartridge injured an extra's face. Production covered medical costs, but filming continued. For the cast, danger was simply part of the job description. The filming schedule itself was brutal. Outdoor shoots in California often took place in heavy wool uniforms under intense heat, with days stretching 12 to 14 hours. Actors frequently suffered heat exhaustion, dehydration, and fatigue. Medical staff became a permanent presence on set. Morrow collapsed more than once but returned quickly, unwilling to appear weak. Other actors followed suit, creating an unspoken competition over endurance. Adding to the realism was technical advisor Paul "Frenchie" Freeze, a real World War II veteran who had seen combat firsthand. He pushed the writers to abandon glamorous portrayals of war and focus on its harsh realities. Scenes were rewritten to remove heroic cliches and replace them with confusion, fear, and exhaustion. His influence helped shape the show's darker tone and earned respect from actual veterans watching at home. Guest stars quickly discovered this was no ordinary television set. Future stars such as Robert Duvall and Charles Bronson found themselves thrown into chaotic battle scenes with explosions, screaming actors, and relentless physical demands. Many later described the experience as more like boot camp than acting work. The show became known as a proving ground. Survive a week on the set, and you could handle almost anything in Hollywood. Even the actors portraying German soldiers carried emotional weight. Many were American veterans who had fought in World War II themselves. Wearing enemy uniforms and reenacting battles stirred painful memories. Some struggled deeply with the experience, highlighting how close the production came to reliving real trauma. One of the show's most iconic items was Sergeant Saunders' battered helmet, worn by Morrow throughout the entire series. It became so closely associated with him that he reportedly took it home between seasons. By the end of the run, it symbolized not just the character but the physical and emotional ordeal he had endured. Despite its later success, the show nearly failed before it began. Early test screenings found it too dark and depressing for primetime audiences. Executives feared viewers wouldn't want such a grim depiction of war. Only after editing for tighter pacing and stronger action did it receive approval. Once aired, however, it gradually built a loyal adult audience. Ironically, the series ended not because of poor ratings but shifting cultural attitudes. As the Vietnam War intensified, networks became wary of military programming. The cancellation came abruptly, leaving storylines unresolved and cast members stunned. For many involved, It felt less like the end of a show and more like being discharged from a unit without warning. Explosions on the series were real demolitions handled by experienced technicians. Large blasts could be felt far beyond the set, sometimes alarming nearby residents. Morrow often insisted on standing as close as safety rules allowed, chasing the adrenaline and realism that fueled his performance. Directors faced their own challenges. The chaotic style demanded flexibility, improvisation, and stamina. Those accustomed to controlled studio productions often struggled. Some were replaced after clashing with Morrow's insistence on authenticity. The few who adapted delivered some of the show's most memorable episodes. Financially, the series was expensive for its time. Authentic uniforms, location shooting, and pyrotechnics drove costs far beyond typical television budgets. Producers reused footage and props where possible but resisted compromises that would undermine realism. Budget battles with the network were constant, especially in later seasons. Rick Jason eventually directed an episode himself, an unusual move for a television actor at the time. He approached it with intense dedication, delivering a critically praised story about survival and moral conflict. Yet the experience was so exhausting he chose not to direct again. Research for scripts was exhaustive. Writers studied military reports, interviewed veterans, and examined real battle tactics. Many veterans later praised the show for capturing the emotional truth of combat rather than just its spectacle. Injuries were frequent enough that a physician remained on call. Broken bones, burns, and concussions were not uncommon. Cast members often worked through pain to avoid delaying production, reinforcing the sense that the show demanded sacrifice. Relations with the U.S. military evolved over time. Initial reluctance gave way to cautious support as the show gained respect among veterans. Equipment and advice were eventually provided, though producers fought to maintain creative independence. By the final season, fatigue and budget cuts took their toll. Morale declined, key personnel departed, and the physical strain on actors became increasingly visible. The once relentless energy of earlier years began to fade. After the series ended, both Morrow and Jason struggled to escape their roles. Audiences continued to see them as their characters, limiting future opportunities. The psychological impact of portraying soldiers for so long lingered, illustrating how deeply the show had affected them. Despite its influence on later war films and television, the series has faded from mainstream memory. It is rarely rebroadcast and remains largely unknown to younger audiences. Yet among historians and veterans, it is still regarded as one of the most honest portrayals of combat ever produced for television. One final legend surrounds a prop German Luger pistol said to have been captured during World War II and later used on the show. After production ended, it disappeared without a trace. Whether lost, stolen, or quietly kept as a souvenir, its fate remains unknown, a fitting symbol for a series rooted in real history yet slipping into obscurity. In the end, the show's greatest achievement may have been its refusal to glamorize war. It portrayed conflict not as heroic spectacle but as exhaustion, fear, and survival. For the people who made it, that truth wasn't just scripted. It was lived, day after punishing day, until the cameras finally stopped rolling. If you love the scandals, rivalries, and secrets behind Hollywood's biggest legends, subscribe to Hollywood Feuds.